Welcome to Sinister Heroes. I'm your host, Danny Iniquitous. Thank you for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, this is a channel about Dungeons and Dragons where we try and take a darker tone with everything we do here. So if that's your bag, definitely hit that like and subscribe button. A big thank you to our Patreon supporters. What you do is absolutely amazing. We love you guys. Thank you so much for all your support. If you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, the link is in the description, as well as a link to our good friends at Critical Failures and our gaming channel, Veldcrest. Check us out. With that out of the way, we're going to jump into this week's video. We're going to talk about something near and dear to my heart, the Undead. We're talking about the Undead Warlock. Alright, so the Unearth Arcana of the Undead Patron. Let's get through this, because this is definitely something I love, and I actually really like the Undead Patron for the Warlock normally. So, let's talk it out. At level 3, you gain Form of Dread. As a bonus action, you transform into an avatar of your patron's dreadful power, getting the benefits below for 1 minute until you have the incapacitated condition or until you end the form. No action required. You can transform a number of times equal to your charisma modifier and regain every expended use when you finish a long rest. So, alright there, it's pretty same to the previous one. It is ultimately you will get 5 per day unless you get some special items that bring you up to 22 charisma. So you do gain at this point 2 parts for this ability. You gain Facsimile of Life. You gain temporary hit points equal to 1d10 plus your warlock level. So that's a pretty good buffer to add on defensively. 1d10 can be a lot depending on your warlock level. Granted, at its highest point it's just 30 if you're level 20 and you rolled a 10. But any additional temporary HP, you figure that as a buffer before actual damage comes towards you, so it's all a benefit for you. You also gain Frightful Avatar. You have immunity to the frightened condition. Additionally, once per turn when you hit a creature with an attack roll, you can force it to make a wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC. On a fail save, the target has the frightened condition until the end of your next turn. So, right off the bat, there's 2 really important things that you need to understand. First and foremost, Undead cannot be frightened. You need a special turn undead ability in order to do that, otherwise they will not be frightened. So right at Jump Street, Undead, this is worthless against. That's just a fact. Secondly, I believe this class is significantly better as a Eldritch Blast Warlock, simply because with the multiple rays of Eldritch Blast, you can target different people. So you can attack 2 and then try and frighten a third, which might be better than just attacking one thing 3 times, depending on your circumstance. Now, also, if the creature fails the saving throw, they have the frightened condition until the end of your next turn. You can reapply the frightened condition, which is important because you can keep burning through things that would definitely be detrimental. It can be a very big re-established debuff for the enemy, and it can be really important to kind of keep this up, especially if you're fighting one big monstrous enemy and it's going to take a few rounds to take them down. This is definitely worth it, considering how you do your attacks. Depending on what builds you do with your warlock, you'll always have an opportunity to do this. Very rare do you see warlocks that do not do any attack rolls. Again, you have to hit the creature with an attack roll to do it. Spell attack rolls are attack rolls, so you can throw a spell at them. As long as you roll for it, you can actually hit this. So it's very widely applicable unless you're dealing with a predominantly undead campaign, which is important to note. At level, you also gain undead spells. The magic of your patron ensures you always have certain spells ready. When you reach warlock levels specified in the undead spells table, you thereafter always have the listed spells prepared. Some of these I really like. I like Phantasmal Force, I like Blindness Deafness, I like Ray of Sickness, I also like Vampiric Touch, Phantasmal Killer, Anti-Life Shell, Cloud Kill, all great things, all very thematic. I always say that when you're playing a warlock, really get into the spells that come with the patron, because it really gives you that feel of what separates the different patrons. At level 6, you gain Grave Touch. Your patron's power have a profound effect on your body and magic, granting you the following benefits. Arcane Necrosis. Whenever you cast a spell or hit a creature with an attack roll and deal necrotic damage, The damage dealt ignores resistance to necrotic damage. Additionally, once per turn when you cast a spell that deals damage while using your form of dread, you can change that spell's damage type to necrotic. Undead Endurance. You don't gain exhaustion levels from dehydration, malnutrition, or suffocation. In addition, you don't need to sleep, and magic can't put you to sleep. So, what is really, really important about all of that? So, understand the flavor text of what you can do with not being able to sleep kind of really depends on what you're doing. Depends on what your purpose is. If you're in a RP heavy campaign, this does get significantly better for you. The reason why I say that is because it gives you the option to now explore, do some kind of reconnaissance, or put yourself in a situation where you can gather information or work on something. Taking the time to do crafting or things like that while you're sleeping is a great use of your time. Now, one of the more important things about the difference between this Undead Warlock and the previous one comes into play at this point. So, in the previous Undead Patron, when you did hit your form of dread, when you did get Grave Touch at level 6, when you hit a creature with an attack roll and damage and roll damage against that creature, you can replace the damage type with necrotic damage when you're using your form of dread. You can also run one additional damage die determining the necrotic damage that the target takes. You don't have that now, which is kind of a big nerf, to be honest. So as opposed to dealing additional necrotic damage when you choose to do necrotic damage, you are now just removing resistance to necrotic damage, but you are forcing it to only work for a spell as opposed to just a regular attack, which is a big change. And that's really important to notice. That's going to be the biggest difference for me at this point. We'll see how this shakes down further down. At level 10, you gain Necrotic Husk. Your connection to undeath now saturates your body. You gain the following benefits. You have resistance to necrotic damage. While using your form of dread, you have immunity to necrotic damage. Unholy Resuscitation. If you drop to 0 hit points and don't die outright, you can cause your body to erupt with deathly energy. Each creature of your choice within a 30-foot emanation originating from you makes a Constitution saving throw against your spell save DC, taking necrotic damage equal to 2d10 plus your Warlock level on a failure, and half as much on a success. Your hit points then change to 10 times your Charisma modifier, and you gain 1 level of exhaustion. Once you've used this benefit, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. So, understand, Unholy Resuscitation is now very, very different. Previously, I think you came back with just 1 hit point, which isn't a lot. It is definitely not a good thing to do. But you do at least get 10 times your Charisma modifier, so you can end up with 50 HP, which isn't so bad. That 1 level of exhaustion, pretty raw. But again, as opposed to dying, this could really make a big change for you. I actually think this is better, to be honest. 2d10 plus your Warlock level ends up with a maximum of 40. But again, it's to everything in a 30-foot emanation. But the real benefit is you don't die. So you do gain that ability, which is pretty strong. And I think that's very flavorful for the undead. Now, Superior Dread. At level 14, your form of dread improves, granting you the following benefits while you are using it. Flight, you have a fly speed equal to your speed and can hover, which is really important. Profane Casting. When you cast a Warlock spell from the Conjuration or Necromancy school, you can cast it without any verbal, somatic, or material components, except material components that are consumed by the spell or have a cost specified in the spell. And Vital Siphon. Once per turn, when you deal necrotic damage to a creature, you regain hit points equal to your charisma modifier. Now, that isn't a lot, but that is something that's going to be continuously building as you deal damage. So that isn't a lot of hit points per turn for the damage you deal out, and it doesn't kind of scale. The wording is kind of murky because it says once per turn when you deal necrotic damage to a creature, regain hit points equal to your charisma modifier. So if you use an AoE spell, you are hitting multiple creatures with necrotic damage. So, you know, depending on the spell, obviously, but, you know, does it mean you regain more than just one, or is it just one? And most of the time, I believe it's situated to be just one creature at one point, at one time. Meaning you would just regain a maximum of like 5 HP per turn. And again, it's not a lot, but the longer you deal damage and avoid getting hit, the more impressive that number tends to be. So let me read to you Spirit Projection, which is the final ability on the previous one. So there is a lot of spirit text, but what comes off most importantly is you separate from your physical form and you become an ethereal-like projection. Like you basically become a ghost. The way it reads is, at 14th level, your spirit can become untethered from your physical form. As an action, you can project your spirit from your body. The body you leave behind is unconscious and in a state of suspended animation. Your spirit resembles your mortal form in almost every way, replicating game statistics but not your possessions. Any damage or other effects that apply to your spirit or physical body affects the other. Your spirit can remain outside your body up to an hour or until your concentration is broken. When your concentration is broken, your spirit returns to your body. Now, when you do that, you gain the following benefits. Your spirit and body gain resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. When you cast a spell of the conjuration or necromancy school, the spell doesn't require verbal or somatic components or material components at like a gold cost. You have a flying speed equal to your walking speed, and you can hover. You can also move through creatures and objects as if they were difficult terrain, but you take 1d10 force damage if you end your turn inside a creature or an object. And while you are using your form of dread, once during each of your turns when you deal necrotic damage to a creature, you can regain hit points equal to half the amount of necrotic damage dealt. So, understand there's problems with both of them. So, in the previous version, the Spirit Projection version, you're separated from your body. You're not carrying any items. All your magic items are on your body. Non-accessible, can't use it, means you don't get those buffs. Big problem right there, right off the bat. Secondly, everything else from there kind of stays the same. Vital Siphon isn't as good as the previous one because, again, you can change one of your attacks or your damage types from one attack that you're doing to necrotic. So if you threw like Fireball, per se, you could turn that necrotic. That would be a bigger hit than if you just hit and got 5 hit points back. So understand how that kind of like breaks down and changes. Some of the things here do make a little bit more sense. It makes more sense to not be separated from your body. Superior Dread being an improvement on Form of Dread makes sense. It does kind of work off of each other, which is really important to do because it makes it feel like these skills have a purpose, not just replacing one another. Profane Casting, again, isn't that big of a change. You still get to do that, but more often than not, that's not going to be a problem because you're level 14. You have those items already. Here's the real kicker, is it doesn't give you the sustainability or defensive ability as the previous one. And that's where the problem comes in. Because the previous one, if you wanted to use it effectively, you'd have to use it before you entered the combat. It didn't specify there was a limit of how far you could be from your body. So you could be like in a closet 2 floors down from the big bad and fight there. You know what I mean? Like you had to be really, really smart about how you were going to do it. And you gain so many defensive buffs. Being a warlock and having resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing is a very big defensive buff for you. On top of that, it affects everything. It affects concentration on spells, because if you do get hit with slashing, which is one of the most common damage types, you're now reducing that by half, and then you have to make your con save, which is significantly easier because of it. Given access to a whole bunch of spells that can require concentration, you can do a lot of damage with that and have such a higher sustainability. That's really where the big trade-off is. You lose that big defensive boost. And you did lose offensive boost when you don't get to add additional damage die to your necrotic damage when you're using your Form of Dread, which is the biggest take back. Is it that big of a difference? No, not really. It's pretty straightforward and true to the original form. Why it got nerfed, I can't tell you, because this was one of the big competitors to something like the Hexblade, because it gave you a lot of things that really worked towards your favor. Truth be told, I hope they buff this up and bring it up to the same speed, because I don't think the Undead Patron was bad in the first place. I thought that was perfect, but obviously Spirit Possession is not as good. because of all the restrictions that are kind of tied to it and the responsibilities tied to it. I think Unholy Resuscitation is significantly better with the Necrotic Husk at the new version. So in truth, I think I'd rather just bridge the gap between them. I'd rather take, you know what? I'd rather just take half of each, really. It really doesn't seem too different in truth, but I think the original one is just stronger. It gives you more offensive damage. It gives you more versatility with what you're using to attack to cause necrotic damage. And I really think that version works so much better in the 2024 version. But again, this seems to me more so an Eldritch Blast type Warlock. So being in the back and being in the distance, you do have a lot of benefits here. It does work to your advantage. And I do think that says a lot. That being said, I do like this subclass. I think the original one's better. I just do. I like to bridge it, but I don't think it just seems too much like I'm just going to be switching out everything for Necrotic Husk. So ultimately, if I were you, I'd play the original, and I hope when they pull out the new version that it stays true to the original. That being said, big thank you to our Patreon supporters. We love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. What you do is amazing. We really appreciate what you do. You really help us a lot. A big thank you to all of you guys who've made it this far with us. We are so close to hitting 5K. That's a big benchmark. It's really important to us, and we're very grateful for all of you. If you like the video, definitely give me a like, share, subscribe if you haven't already. Definitely leave in the comments what you like about the undead or don't. And thank you for giving a spooky kid a chance.